You know, I've been working on this verse that I've called an elephant, and you can only eat it one. If we're going to understand this verse, there's going to be a need to take one bite at a time, and it's been pretty chewy so far. I think it's going to be chewy on, so get your dentures glued in. Okay, we've talked about let us draw near four things with a true heart, full assurance of faith, our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, and now we're going to take the fourth one, which is let us draw near with our bodies washed with pure water. Now, we are 21st century American Christians, and you have every right as 21st century American Christians to look at this phrase and announce loudly, I have no idea what that means. You have every right to do that. But what we don't have a right to do is to take our 21st century ideas about every one of these words and think that we're going to come up with what this really meant when it was written. Okay? So you can't take 21st century ideas. Here we are, 2019, over here. We're reading something here that was written 2019 years ago. You think you know what he had in mind 2019 years in the future? You think you know what that means by 2019 standards? Hold the phone. This guy here, 2019 years ago, was writing about something that actually started happening 1,350 years before he wrote it. Okay, if my math is right, we here are trying to understand something that started happening, that really actually happened 3,300 and 300, yeah, I'll get the number down here. Let's make sure. I was never good. 3,369 years ago. 3,369 years ago, and we presume to be able to, oh, I'm smart, I'm cool, I got an education, I know what that means. No, you don't. Not from 3,369 years distance, you don't. So if we're going to understand what this phrase means, we got to go back, time machine, we got to get into our time machine, and praise God, we've got one. We got to get into our time machine, and we have to go back all the way to when it first started happening. And that's what we're going to do today, is that this has to do with something that started that was established by God Himself 3,369 years ago, approximately, in there. So that's our task at hand. And what I have chosen to do with this phrase is that I have chosen, number one, to go to God and said, I have no idea what this means. Do you ever do that? You really need to. See? And then my next question is, would you be interested in helping me know what that means? Okay, so there you go. First thing that comes to mind, everybody can do this, is that I use the old journal, the old journalists, newspaper reporters strategy. I looked at this and I said, who? Why? When? what and where? That's where I started from. Okay? Anybody can do this. I decided to start with who. Who draws near? I didn't decide to come up with some idea out of my own hat. I wanted to find out what who draws near from the year 1350 BC. Who drew near way back then? So, hallelujah, there's a record of it. It's called the book of Exodus. It's called the book of Exodus. So I started with who draws near in the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Why those books? Because that's the record of when God decided to do this. You got to go back to when it started to know when it was, because as time goes on, it gets distorted, it gets perverted, it gets twisted. You got to go back to when it first started. It's kind of like taking the master copy, the master, and then when you put it in the copy machine, take 3,369 years worth of copying. Do you think you're going to end up with something that's exactly like the original? No, you got to go back to the original. That's where we're going back to the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, because that's where the record of it is. So I go, anybody can do this. You know what I did? How am I going to find out? There's a lot of reading in there. So guess what I do? Anybody can do this. I took out a concordance. You know what a concordance of the Bible is? If you don't, that's another, we'll talk sometime. So I took out a concordance and I looked for the key word in who draws near. Let us draw near. Let us draw near. What's the key word in there if I'm going to look up a word in a concordance? He says draw. I didn't go with draw. I went with near. I went with near. Anybody can do this, you guys. This doesn't... Okay, so I went to the concordance, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I come to near. And I open it up, and I look in the books of Numbers, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy for sentences, phrases in my concordance that have the word near in it. And I come to about a dozen places in there that it tells who drew near at that time. 3,369 years ago. Who drew near then? If I decide that I'm going to by 2019 standards, who draws near, I am doomed to get it wrong. I am doomed to get it wrong. That's way too far from our distance to do that. So, who draws near in the original record? Voila. I didn't put them all down, but I did put down a few. Here we go. Who draws near to God? Numbers 16:40. No! Listen, look at this stuff, you guys. And by the way, John, for guys like you and everybody checking your own Bibles, I'm using several different translations because different ones make it clearer than others. Numbers, okay, no one that is not of the family of Aaron can come near to offer incense before the Lord. Who draws near? No one except the family of Aaron. Ooh, then we've got something on our hands. But we'll go on here. Exodus 19:22. Let the priest, it should have been priests, sorry, who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves. So now we find out, if we're talking about the family of Aaron, we're talking about priests. Guess what? All priests came from one family. One family. Okay? And that happened to be the family of Aaron. Okay? If you don't know who Aaron is, we'll talk sometime. Okay. Let the priest draw near. Those are only two of many places. Why am I going to bury you under them? I would love to, but I won't. Here's the thing, is that if you think that priesthood was only for back then, I need to remind you, or let you in on, if you don't know already, that in 2019, all those years later to the time where we are now, our Apostle Peter has told us that we are a holy priesthood. If you think, well, what does that have to do with me? That's old stuff. That makes no sense to me. It's not relevant. I mean, we got technology. We're cool. We're great. We're smart. We are still priests. Two places, he says, you're a holy priesthood and you're a royal priesthood. So, all of a sudden, let us draw near means we need to draw near like a priest does. If we're going to make progress in God, we must draw near to God like a priest draws near to God. And now I know that some of you have got visions in your head of great big hats and long vestments and dominoes, monopolies, checkers. I know that some of the rest of you have other images of priests along the way. Just stop it. Please, can you do that for a second? Just stop it. Okay. So, that's the first thing, is that we today need to draw near to God the way priests in 3003 way back then did. Well, how did they do that? What did they do? Well, I'm glad you asked. Who draw near to God with their bodies washed with pure water? That was my next question, because the first part, it says, let us draw near with our bodies washed with pure water. Whoa. So, everybody has decided that they've got a 2019 interpretation of what our bodies washed with pure water means. And what do you come up with? Baptism. What do you come up with? You come up with, oh, he's really in the scriptures a lot. Yeah, the washing, they see it, Oh, and you name it, I've read it. I do a lot of reading. I've read a lot of different 2019 opinions about what that means. But let's find out who it is that did this. Exodus 29:4. Bring Aaron and his sons. Who are they? The priests. To the doorway of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. What did I do? I looked up water in the concordance. Anybody can do this, you guys. So here we go. So now I've got another clue in my who, what, where, when, why, and all that stuff like that. So here we go. And the next one is Exodus 30, 19 through 20. This gives us a little bit more of it. Remember, the Bible is not for little children. It's for grown-ups who can think. Okay? And now we need to think a little bit. Is that Exodus says, make a bronze wash basin. Make it with a bronze base. Put water in it. Aaron and his sons will wash their hands and feet in it. Who comes near to God with their bodies washed with water? Priests again. What's this stuff about pure? Interesting. I don't want to spend too much time, but you need to know this, is that bronze basin there, every time that bronze basin is mentioned throughout the whole Bible, it's always mentioned in conjunction with a bronze base. Okay, and everybody thinks, okay, well, you got a basin and it's got some legs and that's what it stands on. No! You look into it further and you find out that there's a basin up here, great big basin, and then underneath it, there's another basin around the outside down here. There's another basin down here. So you got one basin up here full of water, you got another bronze basin down here so that they could have running water. Gravity feed. And what they had, as far as they can tell in archaeology, is that they had a series of plugs on a little chain or something down in the bottom, you know, just like a wash tub. And when they wanted to wash the hands and the feet, they could wash the hands up here, but the feet, okay, so they've got another basin down here, and what they did is they put their feet under here, and they'd pull this little plug, and it would wash their feet. It would wash their feet. Oh, okay, so they had technology. Remember, they came from Egypt, you guys. All right. Why did they do this running water thing other than convenience? Is because it was understood that pure water, the only really pure water that you could get was running water. So what really was being talked about, and I could go into the Exodus, Leviticus, and all those places and show you, but I'm not going to do that. Right? Just take my word for it, that what it means here is it says, let us draw near with our bodies washed with running water. Running water. Lots of Orthodox Coptic and stuff say that the best way to get baptized is in a rushing river. Why? Pure water. The worst way to get baptized is to be sprinkled down in the catacombs, because it wasn't pure water. It wasn't running water. Okay, so this is what's going on here in this spot. So it's priests that are doing this kind of thing. So let's go on to the next thing here. Oh, sorry. When do they draw near with their bodies washed with pure water? Look at what Exodus 30:19 says. When they enter the tent of meeting to serve God. To serve God? What do we think in 2019 when they say, oh, he's a servant of God? What do you think of? Somebody who's running around the country talking in meetings. Right? Or somebody that's just really busting their butt at some kind of program that benefits people. Oh, they're really servants. They're really servants of God. Well, we'll find out what priests did to serve God as we go along here. Why do they wash? And there's lots of verses that go along with that, but I'm just, this one right here. The place when and where is when they entered the tent of meeting to serve God. Okay, 21st century Christians, I have no idea what a tent of meeting is. We'll find out. Why do they wash when they enter the tent of meeting? Next verse. They are to wash so they will not die. Oh, now we're not playing games anymore. Oops. You know, the frivolous, yeah, well, this is nice, but it's stupid, is all over, because he just gets right to the point. He says they are to wash so they will not die. There was a guy in this whole record that decided, I'm smart, I'm good, I'm cool, I know as much as those priests do. I know all about this stuff. I'm good to go. And he's got together with 250 other guys, and they came to Aaron, the priest, and they said, we don't have to wash before we can do everything you can do. Everything you can do, I can do better. Okay? And so he came and he said, we can offer, and we can offer incense. We can offer the burnt sacrifices. We can go into the tent of meeting. We don't need to wash. It didn't go well for him, because when God said through Moses, if you don't wash, you will die, guess what happened to him and those 250 other guys? Anybody remember that one? They died. They died, and it was something for special effects movies that should come out, and they died. Our modern translation of our 2019, "You will die," means you will become lifeless. You will become without life. See? We're really wanting to be in the life of God, life of Christ, the life of the Spirit. If you don't do this, you will be without life. No matter what else you do, no matter how smart you are, no matter how many other qualifications you've got, if you don't do this, you will be without life. And I don't care how much you pump it. I don't care how much you crank the volume up. You will die. You will be lifeless. So, next thing is, what's this tent of meeting all about? Because it says you got to wash before you go into the tent of meeting. 2019 definition of tent of meeting. What is 2019 definition of tent of meeting? Yes, you are all thinking it. Tent meetings. Tent meetings, right? So they say they got to wash before they go to church. They got to wash before they preach to big crowds of people. See? And they miss it altogether. Because let's go back to when it first was instituted. We find out this about it. What was a tent of meeting? The first word is meeting. The thing doesn't mean that a meeting is not where we get together. This is a meeting 2019, right? Do you know what a meeting was in 1350 BC? It didn't mean this. It meant an appointment at a fixed time. So this was some kind of structure where you had an appointment at a fixed time. My question to you is, who was the priest who had washed himself going to have an appointment with at a fixed time? Who was the priest going to have an appointment with after he had washed? God? Well, that's not sexy enough, man. There's no cameras, there's no lights. You know, who's going to pay you for that? Not if you're just meeting with God, because let's take a look at what the tent of meeting was. If you think this is a tent, you got something coming. We think of tent. Oh, a tent. Here's what they call a tent. This was no tent. Here it is. It's 80 boards, 2 inches thick, 15 feet long, 27 inches wide. Now that's some lumber, isn't it? Made out of the most ornery wood known to earth. They really had some sawing going on there. And they had 80 of these boards. They took those boards and they hammered gold plating over them entirely. That's some boards. They were tongue and grooved. They were tongue and grooved, and then they were clamped together upright, not horizontally, but vertically. They were clamped together, tongue and grooved together, and there was 20 of them on each side. It was a square structure made out of these golden boards standing upright 15 feet high. The thing was 15 feet high. It was 20 boards on each side, so that made a square of approximately 45 feet by 45 feet by 45 feet, 45 feet. It was a square. And in one side, there was an opening for a door. And that door was pretty small. It wasn't very big. Just like 5 cubits. About like that. And they hung a really thick curtain made out of twisted, roped, or braided linen. And there was quite a few layers of this, so that it was really quite thick. And it hung down in the opening there, and that was their door. So when we have it, we go to, remember what I said, is that let's see, why do they wash? To enter the tent of meeting. The tent of meeting is this square. Oh, by the way, one more thing, is that it had a roof on it. And that roof was made out of 4 layers of roofing. First layer was this roped linen stuff, real thick. Second layer was of what we would think about as Persian rugs. It was made out of goat hair. Third layer was made out of ram skins. And the fourth layer was made out of, get this will knock you out. You could check it out for yourself. The fourth layer, the one that was exposed to the weather, was made out of porpoise skins. Porpoise skins. You know where they built this thing? 25 miles from the Red Sea and 25 miles from the Gulf of Aqaba. Red Sea and Aqaba are both fingers of the Indian Ocean. Guess what was just a little ways for them to go and come back? Porpoises. Maybe beluga whales. Okay? But anyway, it was tough enough so that it could stand the sun and the rain. I'm going to take, God help me here. So, here we've got this building. It has no windows. Can you accept the fact that it was soundproof? No one could see in to this square cabin. Nobody could hear what was going on in this square cabin. If you understand that this whole thing was placed in the middle of what was called a courtyard. What that was is it was a piece of flat land that was 2 football fields long, and it was a football field wide, and it was fenced off with curtains all the way around, 10 feet high. And within that enclosure, all the people of Israel would flock in there to do all kinds of things. There was, of course, lots and lots of cattle and sheep, doves, and things. There was all kinds of animals in there. They were dragging in all kinds of animals. Can you imagine the congestion at the door into this huge courtyard? And they're all trying to come in. They did not know much about taking turns. There was people dragging reluctant bulls to a big bonfire. The smell of blood and the sight of blood was everywhere in this place. There was guts, there was skins, there was animals going hysterical with the scent of death and blood. There was people dragging things here and dragging things there, carrying basins of blood. There was dust in the dry season. There was mud in the rainy season. There was music going on all the time. And if you read about what their music was like, it was loud. They used cymbals a lot. Bang, 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 and they beat on those things, and they had all kinds of other instruments that were really loud, and loud voices. Have you ever listened to Middle Eastern singing? It's an acquired taste, I want to tell you. So this is all going on, and I can't even describe to you the chaos that is going on in this courtyard. Not to mention all the sweaty bodies. And right in the middle of this chaos, this great big 2 football fields by a football, this great big, is this little square golden cabin. Right in the middle of it. Nobody could see what was going on in there. Nobody could see what was, when they were inside, they could not see what was going on out there. Nobody could hear what you did, and the people inside, the materials, it was pretty soundproof. You didn't hear what they were doing either. And priests were supposed to wash themselves with pure water, and only priests could do this. Korah found out that you can try, and you will die. You will be lifeless anyway, no matter how hard you try. So they are to enter into this little cabin. They are to enter into this little golden cabin with a weird roof. And there is where they did stuff. What did they do in that little cabin anyway? Let the priest come near and minister to him. Minister to who? The president? To the apostolic leader of a movement? To a blog that you've started? They went into this soundproof, windowless cabin, and they did one thing in there. Look at Exodus 28. There's this phrase. It says, to minister as a priest to me. Me. It says that same phrase just in the book of Exodus 14 times. Over and over and over again. It says, what do priests do in that little cabin? They serve me. They minister to me. Well, what about all these people out here? We'll get to that, but let me just say this. There was a whole tribe that took care of that. But there was one family that took care of the Lord Himself. There was a family that took care of nothing but the Lord Himself. Look at it in Ezekiel. Why do I pick out Ezekiel? Because guess what? Newsflash, Ezekiel, you say the prophet Ezekiel? No, that's our 2019 interpretation of that. If you're back here where he lived, who was Ezekiel? He was a faithful priest. It's not the prophet Ezekiel, it's the priest Ezekiel who prophesied. He says this about the priesthood. I love it. He says, the priest shall come near me to minister to me. They shall stand before me to offer me the fat and the blood, and they shall enter my sanctuary. They shall come near to my table to minister to me and keep my charge. 9 times. When there's that kind of repetition, you really need to pay attention to something here. You need to pay attention to what is being said here, is that Hebrews, the guy in Hebrews is saying, if you want to make progress in God, you've got to figure out what priesthood is. Because you are a priesthood. We are primarily a priesthood. Here's the deal that I want to point out. Let's see if I've got it on here someplace. No, it's back here. I better do that. Let's go on here. I'm going to... This, as I was studying this and as I was doing this, I couldn't help but think of the story of Mary and Martha and Jesus, Mary, the sister of Lazarus. And this is all I want to point out in Luke 10 here, is that Mary sat before the Lord, hanging on every word he said. Jesus said to her, one thing only is essential, and Mary has chosen it. This is Jesus telling us what's essential for the Christian life. What's essential? Essential, what does essential mean? It means indispensable. You can't do without it. There's one thing that you can't do without in this Christian life. You can do without a lot of other things that don't make you a Christian. Because if you're lacking this, you're going to be lifeless in all the rest. Is that you must find the golden cabin in all the chaos of your life and all the activity of the quote-unquote church that thinks that they're really in the stream of God, they're really in the big deal, they're really in the big times now, is that those that are priests of God will pass by. What does the song say? Pass me by the crowds of people. And on it goes. We should probably sing it sometime, but this pass me by all these other things. I don't have to swing at every pitch. I'm going to pass by all these things, and I am going to wash myself in running water, and I am going to go in to that soundproof, sight-proof little cabin, and I am going to minister to the Lord. You don't go in there because, Lord, you need to minister to me. See, that's what was going on in the outer court. And all this chaos and noise and hooting and music and all this other stuff that was going on. It was all about me. But when you go into that little box, it's all about you. I want to make sure you're having a good meeting. I want to make sure you're happy. I want to make sure that what is on your priority list gets done. That's priesthood. That's what it means when it says, let us draw near with our bodies washed with pure water. It means let us draw near not to the people. Let us draw near to God and God Himself in an unseen and unheard place. In an unseen and unheard place. This fights against our society big time. We live in a society that says that if I can't show people that I did it, then it's not worth it. It's not worth doing. If I can't demonstrate in somehow to people that I've been with Jesus. I mean, here I've got a selfie of me and Jesus in the little cabin. Me and Jesus, see? I went to the little cabin and I met with Jesus. Aren't I something? This is a secret place. This is a place where the real life of the Christian fountains out of. It's not in the activities that are man-centered, that are geared toward the benefit of others. And that's where the message in the church has gotten so wacky. Is that they think that hustling around in the outer court, banging louder than anybody else on the cymbals, hauling around big basins of blood all over, dragging people to the altar, that's the core and essential part of the Christian life. That is not right. There is only one thing, Jesus said, that is essential, and it is to get into that little cabin, that golden cabin with the weird roof, where nobody else knows about it. Nobody else cares about it. Nobody else hears about it. And there, you satisfy the Lord and not yourself. Is that what's essential in your life? Or has other lesser things become the thing that's indispensable for you to say and be a minister of God?